r/AskReddit by Reddical. Marriage counselors of Reddit. Has a couple ever come in where you knew you couldn't help them? My cousin is a marriage counselor, and she said that most couples visiting her have one person who is trying to rebuild the relationship, and the other one has already mentally packed up and left. The sessions usually turn into grief counseling for the one who hasn't figured out it's over already. As someone about to enter into marriage counseling, I am horrified by this and very sad. My ex and I did have a productive stint of marriage counseling early in our marriage. 22 years later, the second stint was less productive. It really depends on your situation. Don't lose hope, but do take an objective look at where you are. More often than you'd think, people come into marriage counseling after they've already decided their marriage is over. Often, people feel pressure to try to fix it by doing professional couples work, when in reality they are just doing it so they can look back after the divorce and be able to say they've done everything they could. If I get that sense, I often ask them if I'm there to help them repair their marriage, or if my job will be to facilitate a healthy divorce process or co-parenting plan. Many couples seem relieved when this comes up, as pretending to do the work of couples therapy is, in that case, just delaying the inevitable. Edit also. It's extremely unethical to continue to provide services that will not be of a benefit to them. So, the thought process OP describes would be a terrible example of a therapist referring cases to someone else or simply saying, "I can't help and here's why," is more than okay. Ha. You really summed up my personal experience. I had moved out a few months before me and my ex went to our first appointment, and I'd known long before that I wasn't coming back. I felt I owed it to him to at least go to a few sessions, although they were his idea, but it still took him 4 months to book. I feel better having this articulated. Thank you. This is what I've learned. You cannot have higher expectations for someone than what they have for themselves. And vice versa. I've had clients that frustrated the heck out of me because I set the bar too high. So I thought we weren't getting anywhere. Conversely, I remember one couple I saw where I thought that there was no hope, but somehow they made it work. The bottom line is that going in with preconceived notions is rarely helpful. People are always surprising. I find it uplifting that a couple you had no hope for actually came out okay. I'm working towards becoming a therapist, and what you said about not having higher expectations than what they have for themselves is some great advice I've yet to hear before. Thanks. I'm glad. That was one of my most humbling lessons. Used to work for a judge. First case on rotation through divorce court was a couple, both of whom were marriage counselors. For real. Being a counselor can really mess things up for your relationships. I was engaged when I was in my MFT program, and my now wife and I had some of our most difficult times during this period, because I started overanalyzing everything. When all you do is talk about relationships all day long, sometimes it's hard to just be in a relationship. Just like a musician hearing every little error in his favorite album. My ex and I went to see a marriage counselor. After seeing us a couple times, he had me in for a private session and said, "Honey, some people are better off not married. You're not yet. X has a personality disorder and there's nothing you can do. He doesn't want to change. Get out. Get out now." I was stunned. "But you're a marriage counselor. You're supposed to help us fix our marriage." Well, I was stubborn and kept trying to make it work for a bit longer. But eventually I took the professional advice. Shoulder left way sooner than I did. "But you're a marriage counselor. You're supposed to help us fix our marriage." I think this is a common misconception. If two people just aren't happy being married, the counselor should help them be happy. Even if it means being separated, divorced. Then they should call themselves happy counselors. Edit. It's a joke. Some people seem to have the attitude that if the couple breaks up, the marriage counselor has failed. The counselor's job is to help the couple live their best lives. If that means helping the couple decide to move on, then perhaps that is for the better. I was referred to a therapist when I was looking into getting tested for ADHD. Apparently the therapist I was referred to was mainly a marriage and family therapist. So during my 2 sessions with him, my boyfriend got brought up on multiple occasions. As the testing was mostly talking about how my ADD affects my life and how many categories I filled in the DSM-IV. Anyways, since my therapist was also a M&F therapist, he kept asking prodding questions about me and my so's relationship, and through conversation it came up that my BF had been married before, but was divorced. At the point that they had sought marriage counseling, my so's ex-wife had stopped taking her meds for her bipolar disorder and had completely checked out of the relationship. And the counselor actually told him, in more words, that it was probably time for them to lay the marriage to rest. I told my therapist this story and he got extremely agitated and started berating me that my boyfriend was a dishonest man, because no therapist would ever tell a couple to get divorced, and that if they did they were committing malpractice and should have their license taken away. I didn't like that therapist much. 1/10 would recommend. TLDR. Went in to get tested for ADD and got yelled at for trusting my boyfriend. Geez, what a dong bag. I've heard bad therapist stories, but that one really went off into left field. When I was shopping around for marriage counselors, most of them mentioned that their purpose was to help improve the marriage or to assist couples in separating if that was what was best. They were very upfront that saving the marriage wasn't the only option and may not be the best option. As my sister said of a friend of hers, sometimes the marriage counselor doesn't help you save your marriage. Sometimes the marriage counselor helps you end the relationship on the best possible terms, which is sometimes very important. Edit. One of those said marriage. This is Merca. Man and woman should get a marriage. My dad agreed to go to marriage counseling with my mum, just to tell her he had a mistress and wanted to leave her. Then he got up and left. Must have been pretty awkward for the marriage counselor. That's actually really common experience for marriage counselor apparently. One of my professors talked about how one half of the couple wants to break up and somehow feels better about doing with the counselor so the other person has some support. I would think that in some cases, it's more of a selfish reason. The other person won't react as harshly to the bad news if there's someone else to see their response. All of it being some strange sort of defense based on fear. Couples where one partner just knows that so and so is cheating, and why won't they just admit it already? What's really going on when one partner feels this way? One part of the couple isn't having his/her feelings validated. By this I mean, he/she doesn't feel like the other one is meeting their needs officially emotionally. Therefore, he or she must be cheating. There has been some type of trust issue in the past and this issue hasn't been adequately resolved. Someone is cheating. My so and I are in counseling right now and it's been great. The only issue we had was in the beginning my so thought we would do all of the work in session, but soon realized that no. We do the work and come in for checkups. It's been 2 months and so many things have changed. I would love to hear more about it if you're willing to share. I'm not married or anything. Just curious as to what they asked you to do. What changed in your relationship, etc. Actual marriage counselor here. In my experience, the reason that most couples come in is because one spouse wants to salvage the relationship more than the other spouse. So, generally I will work with the couple to try and rebuild the connection, usually by improving communication skills. That being said, if I notice that a spouse is pulling away and marriage counseling will not work, I will meet with the spouse that is clinging to the marriage and tell them to prepare themselves for a divorce or separation. I usually have that spouse work on making themselves happy and building a life where their happiness is not dependent on someone else. After all is said and done, I refer my clients, as needed, to individual counseling. I knew a woman in an abusive marriage who talked her husband into going to counseling by saying she'd file charges for him hitting her if he didn't. He left her a few weeks later and she pretty much went off the deep end after that. If ever there was a couple beyond saving, it was them. Not a counselor, sorry. But the one my parents went to see told them, after 8 weeks, that they should get divorced. In his words, "There is no hope for you two. My parents are very stubborn, so they basically went, duck this, no one will tell us how to live our lives." That was 6 years ago and they are celebrating their 27th in a week. So after 27 wonderful years of marriage, what keeps you together? Spite. The 27-year middle finger to that one guy who said they'd fail. I'm studying to be a marriage and family therapist. From the couples I've dealt with, in order for the therapy to be anything productive, both people in the relationship have to have wanted to go to therapy to work on their relationship. Sadly, a lot of wait too long to ask for help, and when they do actually seek it out, it's only because they both know it's over and it's a last-ditch effort to keep the relationship going for as long as possible. My ex and I went to counseling after years of me requesting it. Went to a few sessions together. Then the counselor suggested we each see one independently. I went in for my second solo session and the counselor said that all 3 counselors compared notes and agreed it was the best idea for us to split up. They wished me well and told me that they would stand behind me in a court of law if required. Was there some sort of abuse going on? Why would you need their backing in court? Not a marriage counselor, but a divorced man. 3 of the 6 marriage counselors we saw told us it would better if we ended the marriage. We fought viciously, and neither of would give in. We finally divorced after 26 years when I decided I didn't give shit who won the lifelong battle. My marriage counselor told me that continuing to try to work on marriage was pointless as she clearly had no interest in fixing issues. So yes, they do. Same thing happened to my mom and dad when they went for counseling. My father had mentally checked out of the relationship and it was obvious. The counselor told my mom that she wanted to start seeing her one-on-one because while the marriage was beyond saving, but she could help my mom because my mom was interested in changing and improving herself. They got divorced and my mom remarried shortly after. My father is still single. A lot of these answers are starting with my ex. Well, to be fair, very few people seek counseling in healthy relationships. Everything is good. I just like paying $150 HR to sit on this couch. Which is unfortunate, because preemptive defensive counseling is the best and most effective kind. Imho. I had been divorced before, so asked my new and current husband to do counseling with me at major turning points in our marriage. Like when our first kid was born. When we started working together. When an external partnership in the business was causing interfamilial stress, etc. It was profoundly effective because we were both still all in and genuinely looking for ways to relate better. Not just to build an exit strategy or assign blame for some great wrong. I credit our counselor for a large part of my day-to-day marital happiness and my husband for his part in absorbing and reflecting what we learned together. Since counseling, there have been countless times we've had differences that have been resolved in a matter of minutes, which used to waylay us for a week. My grandma and grandpa were in group marriage counseling where the counselor told everyone in the group their marriages were over. My grandparents got divorced and my grandma ended up marrying the husband from one of the other couples. My grandpa married the counselor. More than 30 years later, they are still in those marriages and way happier than they ever were together. This sounds like a bad Lifetime movie, but it's real life, so it's even better than bad TV. Pretty sure this is my wife posting this question. No. Just a bored 23-year-old single dude. Rest assured. I had a wonderful experience with a relationship counselor. She really helped us figure out how to break up in the least awful way possible. I'm not a marriage counselor, but I've been wanting to tell this story since it happened, although I feel like it's going to get buried among the responses at this point. I was in the waiting area for my therapist's office last week, about half an hour early, and on a day I don't usually have counseling. I travel a long way to see my therapist, but she really gets me and has been an incredible help with my anxiety and OCD. Truthfully, that day I was in a pretty bad mood because of the heat we've been having in Seattle as well as travel time, and could totally empathize with people feeling a little snappish. Anyway, I'm sitting in a little chair and the guy next to me is obscured by a giant bouquet of fake flowers and is tinkering around on his phone kinda loudly. Bad mood, me challenging him by aggressively flipping the pages of the Brothers Karamazov. When his girlfriend walks in, gets right on his lap, and starts making out. A couple of what feels like minutes and they break away. And she goes and sits in my line of vision and they start bickering. I can't remember their exact conversation, But they fought so badly I was starting to think if I said something they'd bring out the punked cameras on me. But a friend of mine, a father, left his wife for their marriage counselor. I'm pretty sure the counselor knew she couldn't save that marriage. Bonus. He built a new, bigger house down the street from the one he left the mother with. The new one had a pond. I am pretty sure that's a pretty severe ethics violation, having a relationship with a client. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.